Hi there, Emmett the God Singer here. This is episode 18 of One Walk 1,000 Testimonies. In episode 16, I talked about living in Ohio with my mother and her awful boyfriend, and being sent on a plane to LAX at like 14 and a half, 15, without anybody knowing I was coming. This is what happened leading up to that. Now, I was about 8.5, 9. I remember this in third grade. Happily living in California when my dad and mom decided they wanted to move to Ohio. They both grew up in Ohio and was born there. So they uprooted us, and the only thing they could sell us on about Ohio is it snows there. Ooh, you get to play in the snow. And being raised in California, we'd never, seen the snow except to drive up to the mountains and, play around in it for an hour. So turned out to be not the selling point I liked. It was exciting at first, but so they uprooted us, put everything in a trailer, and hauled on back to Ohio, in a little town called Washington Courthouse, which is south of Columbus. A nice little town. I mean, it really is. Very old-fashioned, very Mayberry-ish, And, we got there. My dad's little brother owned a gas station there that wasn't doing too well. And my dad was, really good at gas stations. So he was going to go help him. So he had a job waiting. Probably didn't pay much, but I found this little duplex, that he rented for us. So, 2 bedrooms and a bath, kitchen, living room kind of thing. And it was walking distance to the school, So I went to school there. And, it was nasty, snow and cold, I wasn't used to it. What I wasn't used to was the schools in Ohio. See, California, even back in the 60s, was a very liberal state. And I was surprised when my first day of school, we said, "Hi, Emmett, how you doing?" And I'm quiet and shy, so I didn't say much, still. But they got up, and, okay, everybody get up, pledge, hand to your heart, pledge allegiance, pledge allegiance to the flag. And I thought we was done. Okay, now we're doing the Lord's Prayer. I'm like, the Lord's Prayer? You're doing the Lord's Prayer? See, they didn't pray in California schools. Never did. I was so excited, thinking, yay, everybody loves God here. This is a Christian school. Yahoo! It wasn't a Christian school. It was a public school. And most of the kids say it not meaning it, but they did say it, And I was excited to go through and, and say the Lord's Prayer. And that's where it ended. It was a boring school. Same boring stuff, anything else except in schools in Ohio are all in enclosed buildings. I was used to in California, everything's opened up. You go outside, it's always sunny there. Some of the classrooms are in bungalows. But in Ohio, it was one closed brick 3-4 story building, and it was very oppressive. But I did, I made a few friends. Even if you're, quiet, shy, introvert, there's always 1 or 2 friends that you make. And with a couple friends, and, played with some neighbors. And, my brother was there. My younger brother. He's 10 months younger than me, so he's always around. Getting in trouble as usual. But, we did have fun in the snow. There were some good-sized hills at the school. I think it was called Cherry Hill School or something like that. but it was in Washington Courthouse. I mean, we had later on moved out of the studio. My dad found a really nice house in a nice suburb, and my brother and I got our own bedrooms. We never had our own bedrooms before. And we got our own beds on our own bedroom sets, and it was nice. And this was in Fayette County, Ohio, and this is where my music really started to take off, because there was an ad in the paper for a boys choir for, they were having singing auditions. And I really wanted to go, and it was a little too far to walk, but my mom drove me over there. So we went over there and had had the auditions. And I think I've talked about this before, where the auditions were. They found me, I was just, not even 10 yet, just barely, 9. And I had a perfect pitch soprano voice. And the lady that ran it, Dr. Willis, with 3 PhDs in music, fell in love with my voice, and I went to her house and, got professional singing lessons. And she said I was going to be the next Pavarotti, because, she called me a prodigy. But it wasn't long till my parents wanted to move back to California again. And, when you just settled down, they uproot you back to California, back over yonder there, and, to the same place I came from. And you know how embarrassing it is when you go someplace and you're like, oh, look, Emmett's back. What you doing, Emmett? Didn't like the snow, huh? I was like, great. And I really didn't like the snow, but I had to tell them, and I'm like, parents, what can you do? So, there we were, in a junior high school. And what was weird is, I believe in demons. I don't believe in curses and stuff like that, but I know there's some. But this house that they moved into, Whiteman Foothills, the last 3 families that lived in this house, their last name was Hughes, and our last name was Hughes. The last 3 families that lived in that house had gotten divorced in that house. I don't believe houses are haunted. I do believe in demons. But I think, whether demons or not, but, my parents also got divorced in this house. I was about 11. When we moved back from Ohio, I was about 11. I was in junior high. I remember that. So they got divorced again. Or not again, but they had split up several times over the past years. But they got divorced. My dad left, moved into an apartment. And my mom ended up moving us from La Crescenta, which is in the Pasadena, a very nice area, down to an area in East Los Angeles called Southgate. Horrible, horrible, horrible town. Very. The kind of thing. Watts is world famous as a black neighborhood that used to be one of the worst. It's better now, but it used to be one of the worst in the world. Those white people just didn't even go there. It's not a matter of rolling up your windows and locking them. You didn't go through Watts, because they would kill you. And it was walking distance from where my mom found another duplex behind the house, that we lived. And I ended up, I think she was only making like $50 a week as a medical receptionist. And California wasn't paying the child support. Turns out my mom had sued my dad like 3-4 times for lack of child support. And the one time she finally made it to court, I remember, my dad showed up, And the judge was going to throw the book at him for not paying. So you owe thousands and thousands of dollars in child support. And my dad says, I have this cigar box here. And he goes, the judge is like, okay, bring it forward. And we're just sitting in the back going, well, mom's going to get a check, And he brought the cigar box up and set it on the judge's desk there. And he says, what's in this box? He goes, money order receipts. So the judge opened up the cigar box and he looked aghast. He was like, how many receipts do you have? And my dad says, all of them. Meaning, and this was years after they got divorced. Turns out, my dad had never missed a child support payment. He got money orders to pay him every week, kept the money order receipt. And the judge was blown away. The judge had to dismiss the case. We never did get the child support, never did find out what happened to it, but California stole it, which doesn't surprise me, in California nowadays. And this was back in the, late 60s, or 71, 72. It's crazy. I never got it. I mean, they should have, when my wife left, she got welfare, and I had to pay back, through child support, I had to pay back welfare company. But we weren't getting welfare, and we weren't getting the child support payments either. So I went to work at 12 years old, 11 and a half, 12. My mom found this vendor that worked at parades. And in California, there's always a parade for something. Somebody's having a parade. And a lot of people showed up back then because, they didn't have internet or anything. So that's where they hung out, the parades. And I got a job walking the parade routes, up and down. My brother and I both. Walking the parade routes. And I remember them talking, oh, look at these poor bands got a Marshall's 5-mile parade route with a band. And here I am with balloons and plastic horns and trumpets and toys and trash and stuff pushing in a cart. And I walked the parade route like 5-6 times, at 11, and I never got any. And we would sell stuff and we would get a cutback, and I actually made more money than my mother was making just working 1 or 2 days a week at these parade routes. And I was actually, my brother and I, we were paying the rent on the house and providing the groceries and stuff, at 12. And that's when I started working. Well, that went on for quite a while. I had my first girlfriend in junior high school, and she was a Christian, and it was very sweet, and I still remember it today. Nothing happened back then. I mean, it didn't. I was a Christian back then, and I wasn't going to do anything stupid. But we ended up, she got tired of it, and, let's move back to Ohio. So we moved back to Ohio again. Just the three of us. Packed everything in a car in this old Ford Torino. It's a piece of junk. And hauled us off back to Ohio. And by then I had long hair. And she moved us back to Columbus with her aunt. And I went to school there. And I remember for the first time in my life being incredibly popular because I had really long hair. And, they just didn't do that then. And this guy's from California, and he has long hair. And I was pretty good looking. And I was actually getting notes from girls, secret notes. Hi, I'd like to meet you. Still quite shy. So, there was one particular, plain Jane type of girl that always hung around and talked to me. And we got really close. It was not a boyfriend-girlfriend kind of thing, but we did get very close. And that was Columbus, and then she moved us to Hilliard, Ohio, in a different school again. I told you I went to 13 schools in 12 years. Or 10 years, actually, because my last 2.5 years of school was at the same school. So we moved again over to Hilliard. And that's where she met that boyfriend, that mean, nasty boyfriend. And we had a little brother too. I mean, it was my brother and I, and then we had a brother that was 8 years younger than me. He was just a little kid. And he was being abused terribly by this guy. I mean, just absolutely abused to the point of almost death. You know, and this guy was mean, and everybody was afraid of him. Mom was afraid to leave him, and it was just, you know. And that's what happened at the time. You know, we were working then, you know, hitchhiking to work, and they were taking all our money and ended up putting us on a plane. That's what happened in episode 16. Yeah, they put us on a plane out there. But then times got better. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. But God was always there. You know, I mean, even in Southgate, you know, the worst part of LA, I was down there in 73, you know, 73, 74, right when the Maranatha Christian music phase was coming out and hitting the mainstream. And I met found the best youth group. There was older kids. I was, 13, 14 older kids that drove cars, and they would always pick us up and take us to the youth group, and you were loved and cherished, and just sang great songs and sit around campfires, and I finally remember those as a young Christian as the best days of my life was in the worst city, in the worst part of one of the biggest cities in the world. And I never worried about, being, mugged or anything like that. There was a story I just remembered. When I was in junior high school down the Southgate Junior High School, and people still pick on the one who's quiet and shy and oh, look at the little cutie boy. And they pick on you. And I had written a bunch of Christian virtues on the outside of a notebook, peachy folder kind of stuff, and Bible verses, and Jesus saves, and the 3 crosses, and, Calvary, and all that stuff. And somebody came up to me in the homeroom and grabbed my notebook away from me and started parading it around the classroom, going, look at this. This guy's a Jesus freak. He's a Jesus freak. And I did something, something the apostles did. What did I do? I said, no, some girl drew those on me. I don't know what her name was, but she drew all that crap on my notebook. Oh, and he throws it back to me. Well, man, I felt so guilty. I mean, just as guilty as the apostles. I denied Christ. In front of everybody. Granted, I was only 13, but still, I had denied Christ. And I'm supposed to be a light. And I struggled over that for a couple of weeks. And I pray and I talk to God. God, what can I do? And God was talking to me. God's been talking to me since I was 5. So he was talking to me. He says, I'll tell you what to do. Get your Bible. And I had my New American Standard Bible. And it said Bible in gold letters on it, New American Standard Bible. Brown leather. He says, carry that to school. Carry it on the outside of your books. Carry it, like this. Make sure it's the top book so everybody can see it. As long as you carry that in school, they will make a path for you. Nobody will block your way. Nobody will pick on you. But you have to carry it and read it during lunches and breaks and answer questions if anybody asks you questions. I was afraid, in an area like that, a rough area. They had the Mexican gangs and the black gangs down there. But I said, okay, God, because I was really racked with guilt for denying him in that homeroom. So I carried my Bible on top of my book so everybody could see it. And for the rest of that school year, I never had a problem. when I would walk down a crowded hallway, people not looking at me, they would just magically part ways, part, and I had a clear path everywhere I went. I met the prettiest little girl when I was 13, my very first girlfriend. Her name was Debbie. And she came up because she saw me reading the Bible. We used to sit on the wall and read through Psalms and John, and Romans was my favorite chapter back then, because that deals with like people like us. And it did, but it turned out to be really good times. God will make the most of any situation that you're in, And I learned a lot. I mean, if I hadn't been in that path, there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't have learned, If I'd have led a sheltered life up in the foothills of Los Angeles where, everybody's nice and friendly suburbia, it would have been different, but God's always there. So it happened. I still kept singing, The schools back then had glee clubs, and it was nice to, join glee clubs when I couldn't find a band to sing in. I would join the glee club, and met a lot of good friends, friendly people, got to sing lead a lot. Sometimes they'd put me in the bass. Oh, he can sing bass. Well, if I had a 5-octave voice, I can also sing a mezzo-soprano. But we need bass. Okay, I'll sing bass. And I liked the people I was hanging around with, and it was fun. But that's what happens when you're young. More later. Love God. Keep your coffee warm. There's one more story I forgot about. It happened in Southgate Junior High School when I was in there for almost a year. We had almost no money and no groceries most of the time. And my mother would give us 20 cents a day to take to school. Now, you could buy one horrible bean burrito. It was just refried beans stuffed in a little tortilla this big. Or milk was 10 cents a carton for a nice carton of milk. So, and I don't know how it happened. Even today, I mean, God put this other boy here, and I had 2 cartons of milk. God said, buy 2 cartons of milk. So, okay. And I go sit over there. So I went over and sat over there, on a wall, by myself. And this boy came up. He had a sack lunch. He says, you got 2 cartons of milk. I go, yep. That's all I got. That's all we can afford. He goes, I have 2 bologna sandwiches in this bag. My dad makes them for me every day. I'll trade you a bologna sandwich for one of those cartons of milk. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Why not? So, I mean, and I never learned this kid's name. God just put in there. It might have been, for all I know, it might have been an angel, because you never know when you're, when you're entertaining angels on earth. But I never learned his name, but we sat there and talked. And his story was, very similar to ours. He lived with his dad, and it was just, him and his dad. And he had a brother, too, like I did. And his dad would make him, 2 bologna sandwiches. He didn't have money, but he would make him 2 bologna sandwiches. Just white bread, mayonnaise, and one piece of bologna. Put the bread together. So, for about 8 months, we would meet, behind this building on this wall, and I would trade him a carton of milk for one of his sandwiches. And, we did that for a long time, and God put him there. I know God put him there. Because he could have drank water or something and had his sandwiches, but every day for almost, the entire school year, I got to eat a bologna sandwich. And, today I still love bologna sandwiches, because it was a good thing back then, when you didn't have food, bologna sandwiches was a good thing to have. But that happened at that same school. Same time I was carrying my Bible. I was enjoying the youth group, enjoying the Maranatha music. with my girlfriend Debbie, you know, going to the youth groups and singing at church on Sunday and in the glee clubs and stuff. So God will always shine brightest in the darkest places. And this is a dark place, and God shone really bright there. You know, good day, wouldn't trade it for anything. But that's the end of episode 18. God loves you.